Hello. Hello. Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
So I don't really have anything to demo. I've been trying to catch up for this week, and then yesterday I spent a lot of time working on random stuff, just struggling to catch up. So I wish I had something to show for, because I've been trying to work on some dashboards for console and Nginx, but that work kind of got held up due to vacation and such. So I don't really have anything fun to show for right now.
Can I just fire random questions at you instead? How are your Nginx logs? Did you find them?
Not yet. I haven't touched that issue this morning. Yesterday I didn't see them, so either we don't have any errors or my query is still incorrect on that part, but I haven't looked back into it yet.
Okay.
Can I saw a question being posted about Nginx logs. Where did you get to with that? What's the decision?
The route that I'm taking currently is that we're just going to drop all the access logs like we've been doing for the past 2 years and such.
Yeah.
And we're going to take anything out of standard out from our pods and send those to Stackdriver currently. Stackdriver is still not the greatest solution, but it's better than being completely
And standard out is where the Nginx error log goes?
Standard out is where the access logs are. Standard error will have anything related to the controller and its ability to configure itself, fail to configure itself, and such.
Yeah. So yeah, so standard error is where the Nginx error _ log is going at the moment. Is that right?
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah. Because it is really helpful at times, but it's also totally unstructured and kind of difficult to, or at least the last time I looked at it, but it is useful when you need it.
It would be very difficult to put those in Kibana, so I thought Stackdriver would be a good start. If we could figure out the appropriate messages that are useful, maybe we could parse just those particular items out, but I figured that's going to be a solution for the future. I'm just trying to get some logging somewhere.
Those log-based metrics are horrible. Yeah. Would you add a tooling link, one of those tooling links to the Nginx dashboard once you've done that? So we've got okay, awesome. Thank you.
I was waiting for me to finish that project because right now no logs are showing up, which is kind of a little bizarre. Because I know we are getting errors. Like pre sees a lot of errors come through, a decent amount considering it's an idle system. So I thought I'd at least see a few in staging, but I don't see anything at all. So I think my query is incorrect. I just haven't gotten a chance to look at it today.
You often see like buffering, things about buffering filled up and kind of weird stuff like that in those logs.
We also see a bunch of stuff related to SSL certs because there's we're not configuring an SSL certificate for our TLS backend because everything is already encrypted coming from our Google load balancer. So it's just kind of a missing configuration item that Nginx controller periodically complains about. Something that we could safely ignore because we're not having to process that request. But I don't see that at all. So I think I still need to look into it. Work in progress.
Do you want to use time here to check your query?
I guess we could. Sorry on staging. Stackdriver. Router. So our configuration is using a router or a log sync. I don't know why they interchange these two items. This is the one that we created. If we go to using details, I thought there was a way to like preview. There is preview logs. And last time I looked at this, it was completely empty. So the filter is incorrect. I see the incorrect project in here, so we could fix that quickly. That's probably a copy and paste error that I didn't do correctly, but we're still not.
Where's the config for this? Is this in
Terraform.
Terraform, and it's just you're just saying how do you do it? Like what's that side of it look like? Like, do you specify the standard out goes here and standard error goes here, or at least standard out goes to dev null?
The filter includes which one we want. Oh, that's right. This was the fix for the change. Oh, go back. Whoops. I never played with this particular Terraform module before, so when we first implemented it, it wasn't working. Yeah, see, I completely wrong project name. So this should actually be the variable project that we use.
Yeah.
And it's just pulling it out of standard error. And we're specifically looking for the Nginx ingress. The label of k8s app is equal to Nginx ingress, which should capture all objects that are part of the Nginx ingress, including the controller and maybe the default backend. I'm not entirely sure. The default backend shouldn't be receiving any traffic anyways, so we should never see any data from those at all. Maybe the pod startup and shutdown logs as they periodically get rotated, but it's not a big issue. So there's clearly a typo here.
Yeah.
Like we're still not seeing anything at all. So like I guess technically there could be
just
no
remove. So just like if you go to the query and you click on it, just start removing bits, right? Or you can hash them out. You can break them out onto different lines. And then.
Do you know if there's a way to like comment out?
I think you can use try a hash. No. No.
Color's not changing.
Just cut them out. Yeah. And that's surely going to give us something.
Yeah, this will give us plenty because there's a lot of stuff that goes to standard error. The problem though is then filtering it out to what we want to see.
And what was the one that we removed again? It was
removed
pod
k8s
type.
pod app Nginx equal to ingress, or Nginx hyphen ingress rather. So like we don't care about the Thanos. See, this is where I hate. So we don't care about the monitoring hide.
Yeah.
This is just what I do. I'll walk backwards.
Yeah.
Why is Prometheus
that's what I do
as
well.
Because that's still in the monitoring stage, or I guess it's not labeled properly.
There is also, if you click on edit query, there is a thing where you can click things. Just go back to the things, go back to the edit, and just put on a new line, just type straight Nginx. Yeah.
If I could spell correctly.
Yeah.
There's nothing in Nginx.
I don't think they like us doing that. There you go.
No, they don't, because it's searching everything.
Yeah,
this is Platinum UL. We don't care about Platinum L. But it runs Nginx as one of its like sidecars.
Yeah. So it's definitely not getting into the logs, right?
Yeah.
Well, by the looks.
I guess I'm not going to see anything because our sync is not configured properly. So I think that's probably my problem. This isn't going to show anything because it's not being captured all in that sync. I guess I need a change.
I thought that all the logs went to Stackdriver and then only some of them went to the sync. I thought it was the other way around. So I thought that you have to get it right in Stackdriver query language first. And then if you've got it there, but
from
maybe
my
I'm totally
understanding,
wrong on that.
because we're dropping it in another sync, we have to configure another sync to capture it. So maybe that's why I wasn't getting anything yesterday, is because the sync is just wrong.
Yeah.
So I need to fix this typo here.
var project.
Yeah. Okay. Well, since I know I have a plan of action for that, I don't want to spend the rest of our demo time creating a merge request and sitting here watching it go through. So, I'm kind of bummed that Henry is not feeling good, because I would love to talk more about Sidekick a little bit.
Yeah, that's something I'd love to chat about. Like, we can catch Henry up. Like, do we know what what's the status of that one?
Last I saw, he's got a merge request that will bump the amount of nodes that we are expanding in our node pools. So let me see if I could find the issue that I was commenting on.
Is this related to the sidekick pools hitting the top?
Yes, we're increasing the amount of nodes that we're running, which is a fine suggestion. But what I'm concerned about, and this is why I want to find where I was commenting on.
Just dropped it in the agenda.
Okay. I'm starving. Okay, so the very last comment thread that we started, I have yet to read Henry's response. But prior to us migrating to Kubernetes, we only had 19 nodes for these 3 shards that he's currently investigating. 19 total. And currently, we've maxed out at 30 nodes, and this is 10 across each zone, for the urgent CPU bound and low urgency CPU bound. And his merge request bumps it up to a maximum of 120 and 90 nodes respectively. I think we need to take some time and look at how we scale. Like, we need this large amount of nodes because of how Kubernetes is scheduling, but I don't think we are utilizing these pods effectively. Like, they are super inefficient.
Absolutely not.
So I think we need to start targeting our scale.
But we have to also increase the size in the meantime, right? We can't.
I mean, in the meantime, yes. Like, this will get rid of our saturation alert. I think as soon as we get rid of that, we need to start figuring out, and I think that's what Henry is starting to look into.
Yeah,
maybe not. It looks like he's addressing the scheduling situation in his math, which makes sense. Like, he's addressing the fact that we're saturated. That's totally reasonable. Yeah, his second sense, we need to figure out a better HPA target average. Because currently, like, we scale when the CPU exceeds 450 millicores, which is not even a full core. And we just did this quickly when we first migrated the service. Like, we had an issue in the backlog. It might actually be this one. Yeah, it is this one, to revisit our HPA targets. So I think we need to start looking into how we scale, what metrics are important to us to determine whether or not we are suffering. AppDex is always a good start, but we did discover during the API migration that the Ruby thread contention was also a saturation point that we wanted to pay attention to. So I think if we had other metrics that we knew that contributed to a saturation, so that we know that we're not suffering when we start to adjust the way we scale, we'll have a better idea on how to make our pods a little bit more effective, thereby lowering the amount of nodes that we require as well. I just don't know what those metrics should be. Like, I could sit here and utilize AppDex all day long, but if something else, such as, I don't know, Ruby thread contention, for example, starts to appear up again as a saturation metric, I don't know if that's one that we account for Sidekick, but if that's another one we need to look into, then perhaps we should build a list of stuff we want to monitor.
The thing that you really want to do is pick one and focus on one, because otherwise there's just too many variables otherwise, and it becomes really difficult to kind of. And so when we were doing the Sidekick, remember when Sidekick was in a really weird state, and like different workers, and the one number that we used there was just the amount of time that the jobs were taking to run, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the ultimate. And we could see on that, and we kept like tuning up and down and up and down until we found the right number for each of the different fleets. We came up with a different but the thing that we were optimizing on was just that single number. And I don't think you want to have too many different variables, because it just becomes like mind blowing to kind of try go through them. So, we've got all the data in Elasticsearch, and like, would it be possible to run different controllers with different HPAs for the same fleet, or is that like out of the question?
I'd have to research that. I know we could set, well, I'd had to figure out what we could do with our Helm chart. I suspect we should be able to, because I think we do an override for one of them. Let's
Actually,
see if we could
I mean, it
validate.
would be fine to just have the one, and then just, you don't need to get fancy and do them alongside one another. You can just do them at least you've got to give each one like a day at least, right? Because you can't say
Yeah.
this one's running during the day and this one's running in the middle of the night. So they've got to have the same kind of. And we get kitten TV.
Yeah, these, so there's another one of those things, and they just play all day long. They sleep for 5 minutes and then just immediately back to play mode. It's ridiculous.
Awesome.
Where I could have sworn that we had an override somewhere for our scale. Okay, so for the urgent CPU bound, we lower our HPA target to 300 millicores. But for all the rest, it looks like we utilize our default, which we configure somewhere else.
Can
So
you
let me
share a
go
screen?
back. Yeah. So I'm just looking for where we
Yeah.
configure. I don't know what the chart default is. Sidekick. Can't even spell it correctly. So sidekick, and then the HPA for this one is somewhere in here. So, okay, so we set our target average value to 400 millicores. So that's going to be applied across all deployments. But for production, we override that for one of them. What did
So
I say, 350? I guess not.
I would say the first thing is like,
This one,
let's,
300.
when we optimizing it, only do it for one fleet at a time. And that's because the reason they're broken up in that way is because they have different like performance characteristics. So the urgent CPU bound are kind of more CPU bound. And what would be super useful is if you could just keep increasing that HPA millicores number until you start seeing a degradation on the and see how high you can take that, and just push it up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And then like when it starts degrading, that's at least gives us like kind of the top point. And then do the
What
same
would you be
thing.
looking at for the degradation? Like we have a lot of
The
queues that operate
latency.
on these shards.
So what you'd want to do is you would want to I mean, this is kind of one of those things where it probably depends on once you start looking at the data, but you could, if you're using long enough time periods, like 24 hours, you're going to have millions and millions of jobs in there. And so you probably get enough like average that you can just use all of them. If you wanted to do shorter periods, you've got to be really careful that you use kind of the same workloads that are the same. But I would say if you use long enough periods, like 24 hours, you could probably just say, on average, these jobs are taking less time, particularly because it's already urgent CPU bound. So they should all be relatively short jobs.
Does the AppDex for a particular shard utilize latency as part of its contributing factor?
That is what aptX is, but also I would specifically use the latency and not the aptX, because aptX
Okay.
is good for monitoring. It's not good for what you're trying to do here, right? Because remember, I think the bucket for urgent, for the aptX for urgent, is 1 minute, right? So
Yeah.
that's the only resolution that we have is below a minute or above a minute. And here it might go from like 50 seconds to, well, it won't be that. It'll be like 4 seconds to like 3 seconds, and or maybe 4 seconds to 5 seconds. The aptX is still going to be 100%, but things are it could go from 4 seconds to 8 seconds. So it's running at half the speed, and the aptX won't be impacted because aptX is a very broad measure. It's not like fine grained, right? So that's why we want to do the actual latencies, and for that you have to use ELK and not Prometheus.
So we have two aptX items for at least a specific queue, the queue aptX and execution aptX.
Yeah, we don't want to use those.
Okay, so we probably want to
Yeah,
look at our shard detail, not queue detail then. Well, I guess we have to
yeah.
at that point.
So
So in
it's
our
also
shard
like
detail,
even in the shard detail, that's still based on the Prometheus histograms. So there's a bucket that goes from like 10 seconds to 30 seconds, right? And so if everything's in there and it's just getting in, like it's running at 11 seconds, and then we kind of change something and things get really slow and now they're running at 20 seconds, the way histograms work in Prometheus, you won't see, it's impossible to see that, because the histogram is like kind of taking a picture and turning it into 5 pixels, right? And
yeah.
then it's like it's removing lots of data from information from the signal. And so it's much better to use ELK and to look at the logs, because with logs you get the actual points. And so when you say give me the 95th percentile, it's an exact measure. With the histogram, you can't tell if it was at 11 seconds or 20 seconds because they're all landing in the same bucket, right? It's like
Do we
taking an
already
image and turning
have
it into, yeah.
do we already have dashboards inside of Elk for this? Because
We
here's my
don't,
problem
yeah,
today with our dashboards is that
yeah,
anytime I go to our shard detail, this is catch all, just for
yeah.
1 hour, no data for any freaking shard at all.
Wait, what's this? Why is this?
I don't
Are these
know.
broken? Go to like a normal time, like 6 hours?
6 hours, they just chug all day long.
Oh, this isn't good. Have you
There we
opened?
go.
Well,
We have data for
but
5 minutes.
that's weird.
See, now I'm
um,
worried that I'm sending a page to the engineer on call because Grafana is now going to exceed its SLIs or something. So I do
that's
agree
not.
that looking at elk is probably a better solution, but I
Yeah.
wonder if we already have that chart or if I need to build it.
So it's if you go open your dashboard, open your share your screen again. Go to the Sidekick main dashboard. Um,
Sidekick main,
yeah, you probably got it in your history somewhere, but yeah,
the overview.
yeah. And then if you go look at one of the C shard catch-all SLI index, blah, 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 on the right-hand side where it says details under observability tools,
Yeah.
choose, scroll down a little bit further, scroll down because that should be scrolly, yeah. And then just choose percentile latency aggregated, Kibana catch-all percentile
Percentile.
latency aggregated. Click on that.
What's the difference between split and non-split?
Split will split it according to some dimension. So it'll give you 5 charts. The non-split will give you one series. So the split one is
Gotcha.
for each thing that we have in Kibana, we have like a prominent series or a dimension that we by default split over.
Yeah.
So what have we got here? Is this running? Oh yeah, it's got the non. Yeah, there we go. So that is percentiles. If you open up that percentile, we can look at what it is. But yeah, so it's 95th percentile here, right?
Well, of course, we could add to that if we wanted to.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, exactly. Now the really dumb thing is you can't do that. It gets upset if you put them in the wrong order. Let's see, maybe
Oh, does it?
maybe they fixed that. It used to, which is like really ridiculous, but maybe they fixed that bug. You can't. There's no point in having that down to, oh, this is over 5 minutes. Okay, so ideally you want to be using. Wait, this is no. That's too high. You want that to be like a minute or something like that.
It
But
automatically scales it down to the lowest possible
yeah,
denominator.
yeah. Because you've got
So
to get
this is
enough
in
data in each bucket,
seconds.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see like, so those movements are very fine, but with
Yeah.
Apdex or with latency histograms and Prometheus, those all fall into one bucket. So you don't have any resolution. It just looks like a flat line, right?
Yeah.
So that's why
Okay.
you should always use ELK for this kind of optimization and not Apdex or Prometheus.
Perfect. This is excellent. So this gets us to a good starting point as to where we need to start our investigation then.
Yeah, pick one shard though. Don't do it across everything, because obviously it's also like a risk mitigation if you just kind of do it with one. But
Yeah.
it's easier to think about as well.
I guess the difficult part is it'd be cool if we could kind of test this, but like we would have to set up multiple shard deployments if we wanted to do that, which I guess we could
Yeah,
technically do because we have
yeah.
an unlimited amount of shards that we could create. The problem though is if we want to go that route, we would then have to create the necessary dashboards for each one of those in case we
That will
incur some
be
sort of
fairly easy to
problem.
do, right? So there's just a single line in a file called sidekick helpers, and you just add whatever sidekick shard,
Yep.
a catch-all A, B, C, D, and you just add them
Yep.
in there and remove them afterwards. So, and we'd get all
Well,
the
then we also
monitoring
have
and
to
everything.
logging would need to be set up as well because logging is very shard specific too. Or is it?
Okay.
I think it, yeah, it is because I had a problem with Sidekick imports where I forgot to configure logging.
We should be aiming for making this stuff like but yeah.
Easier?
Yeah, like as few changes, as possible in generating, but yeah, but
It,
yeah.
it, it would be kind of nice if we could say, hey, just give me a new shard in one configuration file and it just spits everything out that we need entirely. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a future improvement.
But we can start like right now, you can push that change in and push it up to, plus 50 millicores or 100 or whatever, see what happens. And then you can look at the last 24 hours of data. You can look at the next 24-hour data, and
Yep.
whatever happens with that other discussion, at least you're starting to collect data.
Yep. Do we have, whether it be in our service catalog or because the only place I know where to find where we would violate a our metrics for this is our developer documentation, where jobs have to complete or be picked up within a certain period of time. Do we have that defined elsewhere?
It is in sidekick.json in the metrics catalog in the runbooks repo. It might be kind of a little bit deep in the code. It might not be super obvious, but let me just take a look if I've got it here. Sidekick.jsonnet is what I meant to say. Yeah, it's a little bit sort of coded in, but I can just show you.
Okay.
So you've got so if you just look at the sidekick helpers libsonnet, this is where you would add those extra shards that I was talking about. You could just copy them in there and it'll generate everything. So we got the urgent queuing duration 10 seconds, execution duration 10 seconds, low urgency 60 seconds and 300, and throttled doesn't have a queuing duration because it can queue forever, and it's got an execution duration of maximum of 5 minutes.
Yeah, so as long as we're not exceeding those numbers, we should be okay to expand the HPA as high as we want to.
Yeah, but there will be knock-on effects, right? So, this is what we are giving, but I think a lot of people expect those things to be a lot quicker than those thresholds. So, if we're pushing it up that everything's taking that long, we'll have to have a lot more nodes because our throughput will be so much lower. So, don't deliberately bang up against the top of these. And also remember, you'll be looking at P95.
Maybe stay below 80% of, say, 10 seconds. So everything should be completing within 8 seconds, technically.
I would say that you want to be focused on when the performance degrades from the current performance by a certain margin, rather than those. I see where you're coming from with that, but it sort of makes me feel a little bit queasy. If we take things that were running in under a second, and they're running in 10 seconds now, so it's fine. But realistically, I don't know if people will be so happy with that. But definitely, look. Yeah, I would use the relative, so collect the stats now, or, you can obviously go back in future and use that. I've got to run.
All right. Later, man.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Cool. So in terms of a rough plan then, Skarbek, like, do you feel comfortable with the proposed changes that Henry's got now to resolve the saturation alerts?
Yeah,
and then we do a follow-up.
Like we need to do that now because that will get rid of some of the pages that the EOCs are saying. I think we just need to focus on some cost reduction. Like we're running more than quadruple the amount of nodes than we were previously on Kubernetes.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to rein that back a little bit.
Yeah, at least understand like what our approach is, right? Like get a handle back on this. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we let's just schedule that straight in afterwards, right? Because the web stuff is moving along pretty nicely, but we don't necessarily want to have a million additional web nodes running, want to retune everything, right? So does that make sense? Or would you rather complete the web stuff and then we do all the taints and the whole project?
We could do this in parallel. If Henry keeps on with the Sidekick work that he's doing, let's rock it out. And Graham can continue with the web stuff, and I'll sit here and do the Nginx and console work and incidents because that's all I do.
Well, it will switch up though. Don't forget, Henry's only around till the end of this week.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That was kind of what I was on. Like we're going to need to.
Okay, so I guess I'll try to. Yeah, I'll try to, when I finish the observability stuff that I'm currently working on, I'll try to pivot more towards working on this stuff.
Okay. Would it be useful to have Graham jump in? So Graham is, so a couple of things actually on the web stuff. So Graham's going to try and record something this week and do a kind of async demo so we can kind of see some of the web fleet stuff without us having to like find another, well, you two don't have overlap, but also to avoid another meeting. So we'll see how that works. He is in the progress of starting to move towards staging. He'll have some questions for you about the strategy that we use for the API stuff. So expect some questions on how we actually like split traffic and kind of progress there. But we do have that's kind of also a point where we'll know, like we can do the evaluation and we can see what work we have. Now, at that point, we could certainly make a point of deciding, like, we round up on observability, we'll have readiness reviews, we could get back to being comfortable. Like, it does feel like we should just bring in this Sidekick retuning and get this back. Like, the numbers are so different, right? Like, this, we probably don't want to ignore this for too long.
I see. There should be nothing wrong with us doing this work in parallel because there's so much work with both of these tasks, anyways. I say keep Graham working on the web stuff, and if he's got free time, he could probably help work with the Sidekick tuning as necessary as well.
Yeah.
It'll be a little difficult for him to contribute towards the tuning work because it's always.
It's super quiet.
The amount of traffic is quiet during his time.
Yeah, that's true.
So
forget about this. Yeah.
But if he's got further ideas, like I'm all about listening to them. So
yeah.
But I'd say let's not try to pause the web work. Let's try to work this in parallel. I think we've got enough work that we could all tackle this and rock it out.
Awesome. Okay, that sounds good. Great stuff. Do you want to open up a do we need to open up a new epic for the these kittens are just too amazing. Do you want to open up a new epic to follow on from this one, or do you want to continue with this
for the tuning work?
Yeah, for the tuning work. Yeah.
I don't think that is necessary.
We've got an epic already, actually. Like, so this is kind of covered. So it's got the adjust CPU requests.
Yeah,
we can just
we
put
could
it
probably just
as,
reuse that issue. Don't
yeah.
be tree my tree. I think we just reuse either the issue or the epic that Henry is already working inside of.
So I
it's my
would
tab.
quite like us to, I think we should try and break that issue down if we can. And get it so that it tracks the kind of like the steps we're taking. So maybe if that issue
Okay.
becomes the kind of like resolve the saturation alerts issue, and that can be closed out, and then we can have like however many
To
iterations we need afterwards
make it
for
more
the
efficient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to create the necessary issues or breakout stuff related to that if possible.
Awesome. Sounds great. And it doesn't have to be today, right? We can do this before we get to that phase. We can add these, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And Marin's left he's not on the call, right? Marin's left a note on the agenda just to make sure we raise an issue and let observability team know about those Sidekick shard dashboards not loading.
Yeah.
So,
I could create an issue for that.
awesome. Thank you. Cool.
I would imagine that Goodness, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would imagine that we just have so many pods running that those dashboards are churning through a couple hundred pods per second. And then because we're churning
Right.
through pods every second, there's like a couple thousand pods total that it's churning through to create metrics for, which is probably why they're taking so long. So I think if we improve the efficiency of how many pods we're running, we'll inherently fix our dashboards. But it'd be wise
That's
if
a
we
good
could
point. Yeah.
fix that situation ahead of time. Because
Okay.
I can imagine where in the future we're going to grow. You know, we're going to be running multiple hundreds of pods in the deep dark future, but
Yeah. You just took a kitten out. I literally was trying to climb onto the back of your chair and he just
Oops.
swiveled. But yeah, you're totally right. And actually that puts a lot of that kind of helps on that. We should definitely do the retuning and get these numbers back.
Yeah.
And I suppose give observability a little bit of a heads up that you're right. Like in the future, we're going to scale and we're going to need to be able to have dashboards for these large numbers. And
Precisely.
that seems to be a new problem. So awesome. Cool. Is there anything else that we should go through?
Let me see if there's anything on my list of things I'm working on that might be fun to talk about. Due to the incident we had today, I'm kind of thinking that we should probably do like a good look into our Kubernetes configurations. Jarv already created a corrective action for us to tackle, which I think would be wise to pull soon, if not sooner. But I know we had at one point our network policies related to our GitLab Rails applications. We have it kind of duplicated between our Sidekick and Rails configurations. And I know we have an issue for this somewhere. And then we've also got, there's a secret that we had to create in kind of not the fun way when we were migrating the API that distribution fixed. Just another tech debt item related to our Kubernetes configuration. I wonder if we should start looking at what tech debt configuration items we have that we should probably try to pull soon. That way we prevent ourselves from running into incidents. Like the incident that we ran into today should have been avoidable, but it was kind of our fault for having something pinned unnecessarily. I'm curious if we need to poke a hole in a firewall rule, we have 2 locations where those network policies are defined. And if we could shrink that into 1 location, that would greatly help us out. I want to avoid situations in the future, and I'm pondering if we need to consider pulling that kind of work a little earlier, just to prevent incidents.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. Yeah. So this was actually kind of ties in fairly neatly with OKRs as well. So I think for Q3, we can start thinking about like what are we like other things like this that we want to like tie into kind of hardening off the cluster. Go back and revisit things.
I know we've got a lot of tech daddy type of issues because there's a lot of stuff that we want to fix and adjust and tweak, but I think the important thing is to avoid incidents.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah. Do you have that issue around, Jav?
The one from today?
Yeah.
I'll pull it up. I know Jarv created it.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, you got it already?
Okay, cool. Cool. Okay, yeah, we should get that. We should get that sorted out as well. Awesome. Cool. Is there anything else that we should go through?
How much time do we have left?
Got about 15-ish minutes.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay, so I just have a single question then. Open-ended question, just because I was thinking about this the other day. I'm kind of curious, maybe Jarv would have a better perspective on this, but like what kind of things do we need to start thinking about when it comes to migrating the GitLab Pages feature over to Kubernetes? This is how you know he doesn't pay attention.
I'm paying attention. I don't think there really is a whole lot to think about, to be honest. I think it's going to be relatively straightforward, famous last words, but I don't think like Pages right now, it uses the API, so we need to be aware of that. I don't know, man. Like it's stateless application, should be straightforward. The resource tweaking is going to be a little different, right? Because it's going to be more similar to registry than it is to, API or Git. I think it would be really nice to just like get this ready and staging as soon as possible.
So I was pondering this the other day and I was like, this is probably gonna be similar to our Git configuration because this is gonna be handling TCP connections from our front end. So there's not gonna be an ingress involved probably.
Oh, and no, Graham thinks the ingress bit might actually be the interesting bit. He's saying that he thinks that bit might be the bit that's the trickier piece, is that the way the routing works, because it's going to all kinds of different like sites. He was saying, he was saying that might be the bit that's actually quite unique about Pages.
I'm thinking if we could, I'm pretty sure like the routing of those connections happens within the Pages application itself. So I don't think the ingress is going to be involved in any way, shape, or form. We're just going to end up setting up a service, and the nation proxy is going to be pointed to that cluster IP of that service. And then from there, it's just making sure the traffic flows between the GitLab Pages service and our API appropriately, and then tackling the scale to make sure that we're not, going to blow up the Pages service at all. The only concern that I have currently is that right now we are missing a little bit of visibility with the service. Say, for example, like last week when we started getting a lot of errors because a certificate expired, we don't get those requests coming into or logged into our metrics at all. And we don't see those requests come into our logs either. which is kind of unfortunate. So we're missing a little bit of visibility into how the service operates, which there is an open active issue that has been open for that, but I don't think it should be a blocker. I just think it's be something we should be aware of. But outside of that, I'm not really familiar with the pages service at all, so I think it'd be a fun one to move.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. Well, let's get web through, definitely through staging, and once maybe it's sitting, like if we have a bit of a lull whilst it's sitting on Canary, then like definitely in my mind pages comes right afterwards, and hopefully isn't a major project. But actually, one thing that might be interesting is, do we know already what observability we're missing? Like, I'm wondering if we may be able to try and get some of those issues scheduled with observability beforehand.
So let me pull up the one issue I know about. So this issue, item number 6, that's the only one that I know of. If there's other stuff that we're missing, then I'm unaware. But those are the ones that we found during the last incident related to GitLab pages.
Okay, great.
It's kind of a catch-all because it's addressing both logging as well as the fact that we're missing metrics related to specifically a failure for a person to make a connection during a TLS problem. I'm sure there might be other potential scenarios where we might be missing metrics or logging in certain scenarios. Okay, so this issue hasn't been assigned yet. People are just kind of
interesting. Okay, great.
it currently.
Oh, perfect.
So I didn't want to add blocker to this because this is already a situation that we're blind to currently. So it's not going to change anything. And I would hesitate if they fix this right at the same moment that we migrated it. And then we all of a sudden see a bunch more errors. I'd be freaking out. So
yeah, that's true. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, that's good to know. Nice. So yeah, we should probably see if they do start working on it soon. We maybe schedule around that a little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. And then in terms of like the Q3 OKRs, like it'd certainly be interesting to have a think about. So there is the kind of issue. It's a little slow moving at the moment, so it's not going to be a Q3, which is Gitly on Kubernetes. There's a round of testing that will need to happen. It's kind of expected there'll be some changes that need to happen before Gitly could go to Kubernetes, but we don't know what those are at the moment. But in Q3, there's a couple of other things that we should consider whether we want to do. Like we could look at HA proxy, we could look at secrets, we could look at Redis, or any other items along those lines, like like alongside kind of tuning and like cost saving or whatever the other hardening pieces we want to do. So see what you think would be like valuable for Q3.
I think that'd be a good thought experiment that we should involve more than just the delivery team.
In terms of like assessing what's going to be the most valuable stuff. Yeah.
Yes, because like HA proxy would be an interesting one and should be relatively simple to an extent because it's a stateless service, but we have a lot of tooling wrapped around it.
Yeah.
So a lot of tooling would need to be touched in a very significant manner. Deployments included, addressing abuse as well. Like a lot of that would need to be touched to figure out how to migrate that stuff. It may involve switching out of HA proxy to something else because Envoy, and there's been another one that's been tossed around a lot amongst various infrastructure team members. So, and Redis might be an interesting one. I haven't read a lot about running Redis inside of Kubernetes, but I don't know, it might be an interesting use case. But stuff like Gitly, I worry about.
Yeah, we definitely need to test what happens. I think there's enough question marks around that it's not a one we could just schedule in and migrate and work out the problems. Like I think we need to really see what happens and then plan the project around that.
I would be more comfortable with Gitly if we had prefect in front of everything, but we don't. And I'm not even sure what prefect looks like instead of our helm chart in any way, shape, or form right now.
Yeah. 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 I'm going to add some comments onto the Gitly should run well in Kubernetes issue. And I think like that's hopefully going to be the place where we can start to work out like, what do we actually need to test for? What are the kind of question marks and risks that we can see at the moment, and see how we can get some of those
Jason's
out.
been pretty vocal on that issue, which I greatly appreciate. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm keen on following that conversation with them.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. But yeah, have a think about, and I mean, there were other things we talked about in when we kind of went into tech debt pay down the other month, you know, like whether we helm or, you know, like there are other bigger pieces there that we need to deal with, like
Ooh.
definitely open for opinions on what we should pick up.
Today
Some of
is
these
the
things
DNA
we-
meeting, so
Oh,
maybe I
yeah.
could ask just this question, like
Great
what
idea.
kind of stuff do you think is more valuable next?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
There's some other stuff on the agenda, but I'm sure I could ask the question. So yeah, I'll ask the question, see
Awesome.
what opinions other people have.
Sweet. Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks for this, Gabet. This was like a super, super interesting discussion. I will get this video uploaded so that Henry can catch up with it, particularly like say like there was loads of great stuff dropped in the beginning about how we approach this stuff.
Yeah, make sure you tag him in it.
Yeah, shall do. And then yeah, we'll see. Good luck with the logs.
Yeah. All right. I will catch you later.
Yeah, speak soon. Bye.
Have a good one.